of all the horrors I've introduced on this channel. Some people would have a curiosity about a certain evil, a better understanding of its power. Today, my friends, is a tale that will entertain the curiosity and give you a broader view of this horror that is admired, despised, loved, and feared. A story that will explain how a single strain of hair can create an unremitting horror. Introduction: Chie, a troubled teen that would waste her days hiding in her room, doing everything she can to avoid her dysfunctional family. You see, since her father had been acting rather strange lately, more quiet and distant than usual, noticing how he had stopped showing affection or care for her mother, Chie suspected that it was because of another woman he had on the side. When doing what any other curious child would do, scrounging around through her father's study, finding a small wooden box of hair hidden in his desk, that was when Chie was fully convinced that her father was definitely hiding something. The hair was strangely beautiful. Obviously, it didn't belong to her mother. Whoever the owner of the hair was, it was a curiosity that had been lingering on Chie's mind for days. Whoever she was, she must have been mesmerizing. But it didn't make any sense that a woman so beautiful would be with someone like her father. Not the type. But whoever was the owner of the hair, it was obvious that the hair was very important to her father. Something that he didn't want his family to see when the man literally destroyed his entire study looking for it. Now with the box missing, Chie's father became a frantic man who was on edge. Somebody had taken something that had incredible value to him. Even though he asked Chie about the hair, he didn't suspect his daughter of stealing the box of hair. But let's just say that things got really tense when Chie's father was easily convinced that her mother had taken the box. It wasn't until a few weeks later before Chie began noticing something strange with the hair. Somehow, the cut hair was growing longer, as if it was regrowing on its own. But things were about to get more strange when Chie would show her friend Mickey the box of hair. As expected, Mickey was fascinated with the hair. Because of how Mickey wasn't too fond of her curly hair, she was envious of the owner, just imagining herself looking just as beautiful when putting a single strand of hair on her forehead. But somehow, that strand of hair had embedded itself on Mickey's head. As ridiculous as it sounded, it was stuck. The hair wouldn't come off. And when Mickey grabbed another piece of hair and put it on Chie's head to show her that she wasn't lying, immediately Chie began trying to remove the hair from her head. It was impossible. It was like the hair had embedded itself into her skin, and pulling it was like pulling teeth. But regardless of the strange hair being stuck on her head, Chie was more worried about her father's erratic behavior, his desperation on finding the box, which is why she decided to let Mickey borrow the box of hair for summer break. By then, things should die down between her mother and father. When school had ended, and it was summer, unfortunately, with the box of hair missing, Chie's father was more desperate and more vindictive towards her mom. Even though he was reluctant to tell her about it, to expose his little secret, the strange obsession was the cause for every argument that would happen on a daily basis throughout summer. On one day, Mickey had asked Chie to come over to her place, excited to show Chie something that she found interesting with the hair she borrowed. Because of how the hair can regrow on its own, Mickey began cultivating it, which explains how she ended up with so much of it. Not wanting to share any further details, but Mickey had huge plans for the hair after summer break. And then there are the dreams, that when Chie and Mickey would rest their eyes, they would see visions of a woman with transparent skin. She had sharp eyes and a distinguishable mole under the right eye. far more beautiful than they imagined. Obviously, this woman was the owner of the hair, but for some reason, the woman would only speak to Miki, not Chie. This is how both girls found out that the woman's name was Tomie. Throughout the entire summer, Chie would spend her days inside the house. No urges to step outside, just resting her eyes, trying to catch a glimpse of Tomie's phantom. Eventually, Chie was able to hear the woman's voice. So beautiful, so mesmerizing. Even though Chie was unable to communicate with Tomie, hearing her voice made it so easy to ignore and forget the tension between her mother and father, the violent arguing outside her room. Tomie's soothing voice, making all the bad things go away. After summer break, when the new term began, Miki had definitely shocked Chie and the other students with her new look. It took some time, but Miki had decided to go for it by covering her entire head with Tomie's hair. As a result, Tomie's hair ended up taking all the nutrients, and Miki's old hair fell out. It was strange, a bit scary at first, but with her new look getting so much attention, Miki was so glad that she decided to do it. With so many students curious, fascinated with this new look, wanting to know the secret behind Miki's beautiful hair, Miki was more than happy to show her special method with her classmates, which is why she brought enough of Tomie's hair for everybody who wanted to look as equally beautiful. Chie, however, didn't feel comfortable with the idea of putting more of Tomie's hair on her head. Unlike her friend Miki, Chie still felt like there was something unnatural with the hair, that this strand of Tomie's hair on her head didn't feel right. But for some reason, she just couldn't see the dangers. Instead, all Chie saw was Tomie's phantom. Even during class, with her eyes wide open, Chie could still see Tomie, hearing her beautiful voice instead of the teacher. But the seeds of obsession were starting to grow within Chie when the teacher would call upon Miki during class. Rather than focusing on the lesson or the teacher, Miki would not only find herself seeing Tomie's phantom, but having a full conversation with Tomie. Even though the class and the other students found Miki's behavior strange, dazed off and pretending as if she were speaking to a ghost, Chie was rather jealous of her best friend, watching Miki telling Tomie how beautiful she was. And yet, Tomie's phantom refuses to speak to her. That sliver of doubt in the back of Chie's mind, them human instincts trying to tell her that there is a danger lingering over her, and yet these worries would be drowned out with the visions of Tomie. It's been a few days since Chie went to school. Instead, she would hide away in her room, lying on her bed, trying to reach out to Tomie, trying to understand why this phantom hasn't spoken to her. Could it be possible that Tomie refuses to acknowledge her? And as Chie tried contacting this hallucination, outside her bedroom, she could hear the dispute between her parents growing more hostile, finally reaching its breaking point when Chie's father confessed his secret when demanding that his wife give back the box of hair. He believed that his wife had taken the hair out of jealousy. It made perfect sense, seeing that his wife was nowhere near as beautiful and mesmerizing as its owner, Tomie, the true love of his life. Not knowing what had become of her husband, Chie's mother was filled with rage and disgust, and she would be more shocked when learning that even her own daughter knew about this woman, Tomie, when she told her daughter that she was leaving for her mother's house. A week later, Chie stopped showing up at school, still hiding away in her room, oblivious to her father and his excessive drinking, and her mother who would come by every now and then to pick up a few things before leaving again. Except Chie's desperation to have Tomie speak to her became an obsession that was growing more powerful by the day. But when she got an unexpected visit from Miki, wondering if her best friend was okay seeing how she hadn't been at school for a week, Chie wasn't okay. She was distraught. After seeing Mickey have fun talking to Tomie during class that day, this whole time Tomie still refuses to answer her. With Mickey laughing this off, finding it silly that her best friend would miss out on school because of how she couldn't talk to Tomie, it's not that Tomie won't answer her, it's that she can't answer her because of how Chie only has a single strand of hair on her head. You see, the more strands of hair that are implanted on the head, the easier it is to have a conversation with Tomie, and thankfully, Mickey was kind enough to help Chie with her problems by bringing back the box of Tomie's hair. Since his wife left, and his box of precious hair went missing, Chie's father was now a ruined man who not only ended up losing his job because of his reckless behavior, but wasted his days away getting drunk. But when walking into Chie's room, oblivious to the box of hair sitting on the floor, that was when Chie's father snapped out of his drunken daze, frozen with disbelief. It was her, the love of his life, Tomie. And with so much weighing down on this man, his life falling into a downward spiral, these horrible things being washed away with a sudden rush of blissful joy when seeing his precious Tomie alive again, until Chie's father would find himself confused when realizing that this girl wasn't Tomie. It was Mickey, not Tomie. But there was something about Mickey, something that made Chie's father feel drawn to her, which must be the hair. How did Mickey get Tomie's hair? And when Mickey felt uncomfortable and left, that was when Chie's father followed her out of the house, trying to get a better understanding of what was going on, or to re-experience that blissful feeling of being with Tomie. As for Chie, oblivious to her father's strange behavior, she just sat there and looked at the box of hair, dwelling on this idea of communicating with Tomie. When Chie's father left the house, chasing down Mickey, that was when her mother showed up, with the hopeless attempt at rebuilding her family. Knowing that her daughter had been playing hooky for a week now, Chie's mother was about to be introduced to an evil that had been preying on her family. So much chaos from a single strand of hair. And finding her daughter sitting in her room with strands of hair covering her entire face. Watching her mother's shocked expression as Chie continued adding more pieces of hair to her face. Chie knew that her mother wouldn't understand. She couldn't. Tomie was so beautiful, so mesmerizing. And for months, Chie had been trying to reach out to Tomie, to communicate with her. And now that Chie had finally discovered a way to speak with Tomie, hearing that soothing voice responding to her, Chie had thrown herself into a mental breakdown, overwhelmed with sheer joy and obsessed madness when finally having the chance to tell Tomie how beautiful she looked. Immediately, Chie's mother took her daughter to the hospital. Thankfully, the doctors were able to remove the strands of hair from Chie's face. However, when the doctors did a CAT scan on Chie, they found that a single strand of hair had somehow penetrated the skull and made itself inside Chie's brain, which explains the hallucinations and the behavior. You see, normal hair grows on the outside of the body. It grows outward. But the hair that was found on Chie had somehow been growing inward. And pulling out the hair is impossible because of how it's deeply penetrated inside Chie's brain. In other words, even if they do succeed on removing the hair, it's not for certain if Chie will survive or not. As for Mickey, well, when Chie's father refused to leave her be, hounding the girl because of how he wanted to know how she ended up with Tomie's hair, seeing how Mickey can communicate with Tomie, she decided to ask Tomie about this man, hopefully give Chie's father what he wanted so he can leave her alone. Tomie did not want to speak with Chie's father because of how much of an annoying pain he is. A pathetic human being. A man who fell in love at first sight when Tomie crossed his path, so obsessed to be noticed, to be loved, driving the pitiful man into an obsessed rage, which is why he killed her, because of how Tomie never acknowledged his love for her. Tomie died, not knowing nor caring about this man. And when Chie's father confessed his terrible sin of being a murderer, realizing that this girl was able to communicate with Tomie, with so much to say, Chie's father had the opportunity to finally speak to Tomie, to tell her how much he loved her. Except, in a final act of cruelty, strands of hair penetrating from Mickey's skin, her eyes, the hair grew at rapid speed, and when Mickey began realizing the horror of her situation, her screams for help will be muffled by strands of hair forcing itself out of her mouth. And when Mickey lost control of mobility, as the hair violated and destroyed her body from the inside out, her final expressions was absolute fear before collapsing. Chie's father, watching Mickey's corpse being fully covered with Tomie's beautiful hair, devastated by the fact that Tomie refused to give him a chance to tell her how much he loved her. A ruined man whose love will forever go unnoticed.